What would you do if your entire life was turned upside down by a single daring bet? For Musa, a billionaire whose confidence was matched only by his wealth, it seemed like a simple game, one more playful challenge to prove himself. Musa had always been ready to accept any dare his friends threw at him, never one to back down from even the most outrageous suggestions. He thrived on thrills, living each day as if the world was watching him, and in Lagos, a city alive with energy and ambition, there were always eyes on him. Subscribe and hit like. Our powerful stories add years to your life. Join our Story Lovers Club and let us know in the comments, where are you listening from? On that warm evening, as the neon lights flickered outside and car horns blended with laughter in the bustling streets, Musa sat with his closest companions, Stanley and Marcus, at their regular spot in an exclusive bar. These men were not just wealthy. They had reached the summit of riches, their lives shaped by privilege and extravagance. Shining watches glimmered over their wrists. Expensive silk shirts hung perfectly off their frames. And their cars, status symbols that roared with power, waited outside like loyal beasts. The trio was notorious not only for their money, but for their secret pastime, games of risk, challenges that involved not just fortune, but the raw emotions of those they targeted. Marcus, ever the mischief maker, relished the thrill of these stakes, his laughter booming across the bar as he recalled tales of bold bets and victories with women who sought the affection of the super-rich. That night, the challenge that would transform Musa's life was hatched in laughter and arrogance. As Marcus pointed out a woman across the street, a lady who didn't match their usual social circle, a woman whose appearance defied their standards, he laughed, his voice ripe with mischief. "Musa, I dare you," he said with a sharp grin, "to woo her, marry her, stay married for 6 months. You win, and you get more than bragging rights. I'll finance your wedding, the honeymoon, and even hand over my new Lamborghini." Stanley's laughter echoed the disbelief in the air. To them, this was nothing more than another game. Lessons bloom. Yet that night, under the watchful eyes of his friends and the city's relentless buzz, Musa accepted the challenge, completely unaware that this so-called bet would soon unravel everything he thought he knew about life, love, and himself. Outside, Lagos was painting its nightly masterpiece. Streams of headlights lined the roads. Music floated through open windows, and people rushed past each other, chasing dreams. Across from the bar, in a humble restaurant, Esther stood behind the counter, seemingly invisible to the glittering world across the street. Clad in a simple red apron with her hair neatly tied in a scarf, Esther didn't fit the mold of the women Musa was used to. She was overweight, soft-spoken, and cared little for the designer trends that ruled his social circles. Yet her face radiated inner calm, the peace of someone who was content and kind. As she served food with a gentle smile, she brought warmth to those who visited the modest eatery. Esther was helping her aunt run the place, entirely focused on her work, oblivious to the gaze of the powerful men across the street. She'd made it her mission to ensure every customer left feeling cherished, not just fed. To Marcus, she was an odd choice. Not your kind of woman, Stanley quipped. But Marcus, brimming with mischief, declared that Esther, this quiet, overweight girl, would soon become Musa's kind. Initiating the bet with his outrageous offer, Musa looked at Esther and felt a strange curiosity. She was unlike any woman he'd ever been drawn to. There was something dignified about her calm demeanor, her lack of pretension, and the strength in the way she stood behind the counter. Without warning, he rose from his seat, determined to meet her, much to his friend's shock. As Musa crossed the busy road, the city's cacophony seemed to quiet around him. He entered the restaurant, and the comforting aroma of jollof rice and fried meat enveloped him. The regulars glanced up, immediately noticing his air of luxury, the tailored shirt, the expensive shoes, and the sharp scent of his cologne. Approaching the counter, Musa smiled softly. "Good evening," he said, his tone gentle yet confident. Esther looked up, somewhat taken aback, but quickly composed herself. "Good evening. What would you like?" Musa responded with charm, but Esther remained unimpressed. Her politeness was firm and unflappable, unaffected by his attempts at conversation. She simply promised to serve him soon and walked away, a gesture so matter-of-fact it left Musa feeling perplexed. He wasn't used to women ignoring his advances, and her indifference piqued his interest even further. After leaving the restaurant, Musa didn't immediately return to his glittering mansion in the heart of Lagos. Instead, he sat in his luxurious car, pondering the encounter. In his hand, he held a small piece of paper, Esther's phone number, which she'd only surrendered after much insistence and with a pointed warning. "Please don't call me if you're going to waste my time." That simple, steadfast boundary left Musa amused yet strangely intrigued. Women usually clamored for his attention, eager to bask in his wealth and status. Esther's reaction was refreshingly unorthodox. Determined to connect, Musa tried reaching out to Esther the following morning, his message brimming with warmth and optimism. Yet her phone remained silent. Musa persisted, sending thoughtful notes, calling at different times, only to be met by more silence. When Esther finally answered his call in the evening, her voice remained quiet and reserved. Even then, she didn't immediately agree to his invitation for lunch, holding tightly to her boundaries. That first date was unlike any experience Esther had ever known. Musa ushered her into a world of luxury, a high-class restaurant adorned with fresh flowers, crystal glasses, and the faint melody of piano music. Esther wore a simple brown gown and the gold earrings Musa had gifted her. Though she tried her best to embrace the unfamiliar surroundings, anxiety gnawed at her beneath the refined surface. As Musa complimented her beauty and tried to put her at ease, Esther remained modest, barely raising her voice above a whisper. Despite the luxury, Esther felt out of place. She was not used to being the center of such lavish attention, nor to the idea of belonging in a high society world. She asked Musa if he frequented the restaurant, and when he confirmed, she smiled politely, confessing her discomfort with all things extravagant. Musa laughed and teased, encouraging her to get used to it, since this could be her new reality. Yet deep inside her heart, Esther felt uneasy, uncertain about Musa's true intentions and the authenticity behind all the luxury. Musa continued his campaign of generosity, showering Esther with gifts, whisking her away to movie premieres, boat rides, and luxury salons. He arranged for a driver to transport her to work, bought her fashionable clothes, expensive handbags, and fragrant perfumes. Yet Esther's gratitude was measured, never crossing over into excitement. Her reactions remained politely restrained, her heart holding on to skepticism and caution. She'd never known this kind of life, and wasn't sure she wanted to. Living as she did, humble and hardworking, Esther had learned to mute her expectations and trust her instincts. She kept asking herself, why is Musa doing this? Is it genuine love, or is there some hidden game behind the glittering gestures? The doubts persisted, tinging her every interaction with cautious reserve. Then one night, at yet another fancy restaurant, Esther caught Musa eyeing attractive women who walked by their table. The way his gaze lingered and the occasional smiles he shared with strangers made her feel small, unwanted, and disrespected. Her chest tightened with hurt. Her laughter faded, and she withdrew, picking at her food in silence. Musa noticed instantly, asking if she was all right. But Esther only gave him a short response, hiding the vulnerability that weighed heavy on her spirit. After driving her home at the end of the evening, Musa tried to keep the conversation light, but Esther interrupted him gently, needing to assert her boundaries. Musa, I need some space. I need time to think. Shock swept through Musa. No woman had ever rejected him so firmly. As she walked away, he felt a strange, unfamiliar anxiety rise within himself. For the first time in his privileged existence, Musa knew what it was to fear losing someone, not for a bet, not for pride, but for reasons that cut much deeper. The next day, Musa met Marcus and Stanley at their usual bar, his demeanor uncharacteristically quiet. He recounted Esther's request for space, and his friends burst into laughter, unable to believe a woman could rebuff Musa's charm and fortune. But Musa wasn't amused. For the first time, their jokes seemed hollow, and the idea of winning the bet no longer filled him with excitement. Marcus attempted to encourage him, promising not just the earlier rewards, but an additional 20 million naira if Musa succeeded in keeping Esther close for the 6-month term. Stanley echoed the sentiment, urging Musa not to back out now. But this time, Musa's focus had shifted away from money and ego. Instead, he was preoccupied with a subtle, profound transformation taking place within him. A genuine desire to be with Esther, one that felt real, raw, and vulnerable. Over the next 2 days, Esther ignored Musa's calls and messages. The silence gnawed at him, creating a void that no amount of wealth could fill. He realized, perhaps too late, that the games and challenges he'd lived for were meaningless compared to the connection he was beginning to forge with Esther. For Musa, the stakes of this daring bet were no longer about status or pride. The risk had become deeply personal. At the same time, alone in her small room above the restaurant, Esther pondered the gifts Musa had bestowed upon her. She felt no joy in their sparkle, still haunted by the memory of how he looked at other women. Esther's life experience had taught her to be wary. Too many times she'd seen men speak sweetly, only to later betray her trust. She resolved not to be another casualty of their jokes. She would not allow herself to be used and cast aside. Days drifted by with Musa agonizing over Esther's silence. His world felt suddenly small and vulnerable, a sensation he didn't know until now. The chaos of Lagos, once so thrilling, now pressed in around him, restless and discordant. Every luxury, his imported cars, massive home, and the admiration of society seemed momentarily pointless. Musa realized that he'd never truly pursued anyone for the right reasons. He'd never invested genuine emotion, never really fought for someone's trust. Desperate to make amends, Musa asked Esther for a second chance. With humility, he dialed her number once more, his heart thundering in anticipation. "Esther, I know I let you down that evening," he confessed, voice trembling. "I wasn't respecting you, and that was wrong. Please, allow me to show you that I am not like those other men." Esther hesitated. She'd heard words like these before, and her heart ached with the memory of past disappointments. Yet, something about Musa's tone stopped her. Less arrogance, more sincerity. Deciding to give him the benefit of the doubt, Esther agreed to meet for coffee at a small cafe she liked, a safe place for honest conversation. Surrounded by the gentle clatter of cups, Musa opened up about things he rarely shared. He spoke of growing up affluent but emotionally distant, of always feeling the need to impress, but never being truly seen for who he was. Esther listened quietly. For the first time, she glimpsed the man behind the mask, the loneliness he hid beneath his bravado. Their conversation stretched for hours, lingering on shared dreams and private fears. Musa spoke softly, sometimes halting, searching for the right words. Esther found herself relating to his search for happiness, even as she guarded her own wounded spirit. As afternoon faded into evening, they made a simple promise, not of love or commitment, but to treat each other with honesty, no matter what happened next. It was a fragile new beginning, but it was real. Musa left the cafe feeling lighter, every step a silent vow to do better. Esther, for her part, resolved to observe with hope and caution, giving Musa the space to prove himself beyond gifts and gestures. In the weeks that followed, Musa stepped away from flashy dates and extravagant gifts. He realized Esther needed authenticity, not a showcase of wealth, but simple moments that built trust. Lessons bloom. He invited her to stroll through local parks where the laughter of children provided the soundtrack, introduced her to his favorite street food, and shared everyday experiences, shopping at the market, watching street musicians perform, riding bicycles on peaceful Sunday mornings. Esther started to see signs of Musa's transformation. No longer did he compete for her attention in a crowd. Instead, he focused on listening, asking questions about her family, her childhood dreams, and her love for books and music. Esther told him stories of her late parents, her bond with her aunt, and the struggle of growing up in a city that valued appearances above character. Musa introduced her with pride, hoping his family would see what he saw, a woman of dignity, resilience, and warmth. Esther was nervous, but Musa stood by her, ready to defend her if necessary. To Esther's relief, Musa's mother didn't judge her for her background or appearance. Instead, she offered a gentle welcome, inviting Esther to join the family for dinner. They shared a simple meal, talking about Lagos, childhood memories, and the challenges of running a restaurant. Musa's father asked Esther about her ambitions, and she confided her dream to someday own a bakery, a revelation that warmed Musa's heart. After that evening, Esther's belief in Musa grew slowly but steadily. Trust was fragile, but each small gesture cemented their connection. The bet that once defined their story began to recede into the background. What emerged was something new, a relationship grounded in honesty, mutual respect, and hope. As Musa and Esther's bond strengthened, whispers began to swirl in social circles. Musa's friends, seasoned in gossip, watched with incredulity as he abandoned old habits for Esther's sake. Marcus was the loudest skeptic, repeating his warnings that Musa would eventually grow bored, that Esther would never fit into their privileged world. But Musa remained steadfast. When Marcus confronted him about the bet, reminding him of the glittering rewards and urging him to hurry the marriage, Musa surprised everyone by admitting he no longer cared for money, nor for their approval. "I want to do this for myself," he said simply. "If you can't respect that, maybe you aren't a real friend." This pronouncement sent shockwaves through the group. Stanley began to reevaluate his own worldview, wondering if perhaps Musa was onto something more valuable than any Lamborghini or stacks of cash. Yet the wider Lagos elite, obsessed with appearances, were less forgiving. Rumors circulated about Musa's intentions, and Esther found herself the target of judgment from strangers, colleagues, even distant family. One morning, Esther's aunt received a call from a neighbor, sneering about Musa's motives and suggesting that Esther was being played for a fool. The restaurant's regulars, once friendly, became hesitant, whispering behind Esther's back as she worked. Despite the pressure, Esther stood tall, refusing to let society's cynicism break her spirit. Musa, seeing the harm his world inflicted, promised her that she was more than a bet, more than a conquest or a challenge. Tears welled up in Esther's eyes as she finally understood that Musa's feelings were genuine. The storm of scrutiny only brought them closer, binding their hearts with the shared determination to prove everyone wrong. Months passed, marked by quiet dates and honest talks. Musa and Esther discovered joy in ordinary things, in cooking together, reading by lamplight, and supporting each other through daily trials. The weight of expectation faded, replaced by a deep, abiding affection. They learned things about each other that no one else knew. Their secret fears, their hopes for the future, the simple joys that filled their lives with meaning. Lessons bloom. It was on one such evening, as they strolled hand in hand along the lagoon, that Musa paused, heart pounding with anticipation. The city lights twinkled behind them, casting reflections on the water. Musa turned to Esther, her eyes bright with trust and laughter, and knelt on the pavement. With trembling hands, he offered her a simple ring, a far cry from the diamond-encrusted pieces he once gave away so freely. "Esther," Musa whispered, voice thick with emotion, "I want to spend my life with you, not because of any bet or challenge, but because you make me better. Will you marry me?" Esther gazed at him, tears swimming in her eyes. She remembered all the wounds she'd suffered, the humbling journey from suspicion to trust. Here was a man stripped of ego, ready to love not for appearance, but for substance. "Yes," she replied, her voice steady and serene. "I will marry you, Musa." Their embrace beneath the Lagos sky was like a promise, unbreakable, authentic, free from the judgment of others. The wedding, financed by Marcus as the original bet required, was unlike any affair hosted by the Lagos elite. Instead of flashy limousines and champagne fountains, Musa and Esther chose a celebration filled with joy, music, and love. The venue was modest, but beautifully decorated, with local flowers and handmade crafts. Esther wore a gown designed by her aunt, humble yet elegant, and Musa dressed in a sharp suit, confident and proud. Guests from every walk of life were invited. Business moguls, restaurant regulars, market vendors, family, and friends. No one was excluded, and the atmosphere carried a warmth that even the richest guest could envy. Marcus, seeing the happiness on Musa's face, finally admitted that his friend had won something far greater than a car or stacks of cash. During the reception, Musa delivered a speech that moved everyone to tears. He spoke candidly about the origins of their romance, acknowledging the bet, the doubts, the tests, and the transformation that love had inspired within him. Esther's eyes shone as she listened, holding Musa's hand tightly, knowing that their journey had not been easy, but that it had been worth every struggle. Moments. The last dance of the evening belonged only to Musa and Esther. As the band played a slow, soulful tune, the newlyweds swooped and spun, their laughter echoing through the room. It was a celebration not just of their union, but of forgiveness, growth, and genuine happiness, an unforgettable moment that cemented the start of their new life together. After the wedding, Musa and Esther's life entered a gentle rhythm. The early days of their marriage were filled with small discoveries, habits to cherish, quirks to forgive, and a new world of shared routines. They moved into a cozy apartment not too far from the city, but far from the noise and expectations of Musa's old world. Every morning, they made breakfast together, laughing as they navigated clumsy kitchen routines. Musa, who once dined only in the finest restaurants, now cherished Esther's home-cooked meals, flavored not just with spice, but with care. Esther brought warmth to every corner of their home, adorning the living room with bright fabrics, soft lights, and potted plants she'd chosen at the local market. Musa found himself drawn to her presence, discovering peace in her gentle voice and the quiet strength that had first attracted him. At night, after long days, they sat together by the window, sharing stories, dreams, and quiet hopes of building their family and community. Financially, life wasn't as lavish as Musa had once known. While he still had resources, he tempered spending, having learned the value of restraint and purpose. They prioritized meaningful experiences, weeks volunteering at a local youth center, evenings spent helping Esther's aunt at the restaurant, Sundays dedicated to baking lessons as Esther worked toward her pastry dreams. Yet it wasn't all perfect. Old challenges sometimes resurfaced. Musa struggled to balance work and family, particularly when demands from his business clashed with Esther's desire for time together. There were tense conversations late at night, Musa learning patience, Esther learning to express her needs more openly. But with every argument and reconciliation, they forged a bond more resilient than before, grounded in empathy and forgiveness. Their marriage, once the subject of bets and laughter, became a quiet celebration of partnership, a reminder that true happiness grows from honesty and dedication, not from displays of wealth or public approval. With time, Musa's transformation became apparent to those who once doubted him. His friends noticed the change. Gone was the reckless, pride-driven man who thrived on wagers and surface-level pleasures. Instead, Musa was now present, thoughtful, less concerned with outward appearances. Some friends struggled to adjust, their invitations to lavish parties now often politely declined. Marcus continued to visit, but their friendship, while still meaningful, had shifted into something more authentic. Fewer dares, more real conversations. Musa's family also experienced growth. His mother, who initially greeted Esther with polite reserve, opened her heart after witnessing the happiness her son had found. She took Esther under her wing, teaching her traditional recipes, sharing wisdom about marriage, and supporting her dream to open a bakery. Esther, grateful for this acceptance, began to feel truly at home, not just in Musa's arms, but as part of a larger, loving family. Despite this progress, both Musa and Esther were occasionally haunted by ghosts of the past. Esther couldn't help but remember the pain of being judged for her appearance, the skepticism of neighbors who still whispered about her supposed luck. She worked hard to build her confidence, focusing on her skills and the love she nurtured within her home. She reminded herself daily that she'd been chosen for who she was, not for any facade. For Musa, a deeper self-investigation was required. He often reflected on the bet that started it all, feeling discomfort and shame. To atone, he began mentoring young men in his community, speaking honestly about the pitfalls of arrogance, the emptiness of superficial pursuits, and the joy of genuine connection. His words carried weight, shaped not by theory, but by lived experience. Through shared healing, Musa and Esther both freed themselves from the darker chapters of their lives, shaping a future defined more by possibility than by doubt. Their story became a living testament to redemption, growth, and the healing power of love. The years unfolded with subtle but significant achievements. Esther worked tirelessly at the restaurant, and with Musa's encouragement and support, she finally took the leap to open her own small bakery. The process was daunting, funds were tight, the location modest, but Esther infused it with vision and determination. Lessons bloom. Her pastries and cakes quickly drew a loyal clientele, not only because of the delicious flavors, but because of Esther's kindness. Every customer felt welcomed and listened to, every child leaving with an extra cookie or word of encouragement. Musa stood by her, helping manage the business side and learning the value of consistent, humble work. He traded boardrooms for broomsticks and marketing meetings for early mornings in the bakery, all so Esther's vision could flourish. Their bakery soon became a hub for the community, a gathering place where both the wealthy and the working class mingled, sharing coffee, stories, and laughter. The opening day of the bakery became a celebration in the neighborhood. Musa's mother cooked traditional meals for the guests, and even Marcus attended, gifting a beautiful sign for the shop's front window. Stanley stopped by as well, quietly placing a generous tip in the donation jar for underprivileged youth, a cause Esther passionately supported with profits from her business. Lessons bloom. Every evening, as Musa locked the bakery doors and Esther counted the day's earnings, they looked at each other with pride and gratitude. Their bond, tested by adversity, had birthed something greater than individual success. It had created a legacy of resilience, generosity, and hope for the future. As the years passed, Musa and Esther's love story became something of a legend, not because of its glamour, but because of its optimism and honesty. Young couples sought their advice, and even skeptics admitted the authenticity that radiated between them. They were invited to speak at community events, sharing their journey from uncertainty and ego to devotion and partnership. Esther mentored local girls, teaching not only baking, but also confidence, independence, and self-respect. She reminded them that real worth could not be measured by dress sizes, heritage, or public standing, but by the courage to be themselves. Musa, now a respected business leader, partnered with nonprofits to foster youth education and advocate for the values that underpinned his marriage: grit, honesty, and empathy. Their wedding anniversary became a community holiday. The bakery rolled out special treats, children sang, and the story of how love changed two lives, and by extension, the neighborhood, was retold by elders with pride. Esther and Musa's home, always open, became a refuge for friends and strangers alike. Those in need found comfort there, learning from the couple's journey that transformation and forgiveness are always possible. Family gatherings grew in size and warmth, with each year's celebration more joyous than the last. Through their example, Musa and Esther proved that laughter can heal wounds, humility can redeem pride, and love, real, patient, and kind, can move mountains. Their story was now more than a private affair. It was a living source of hope, especially for those who had once felt undeserving or invisible. With time, Musa and Esther were blessed with children, a dream neither had dared voice aloud in the earliest days of their union. Their firstborn arrived on a rain-kissed morning, greeted by tears of joy and the embrace of both families. As parents, they brought the lessons of their journey into every moment, valuing honesty, compassion, and the courage to apologize after mistakes. They balanced discipline with warmth and joy with gratitude. Musa read to his children every night, painting visions of resilience and possibility. He shared, in simplified ways, stories of how he'd met their mother, not hiding the mistakes, but using them as lessons in humility and growth. Esther taught her children the artistry of baking, letting little hands knead dough and sprinkle sugar, fostering creativity and patience. Lessons bloom. Their home overflowed with music, shared meals, and the hum of neighborhood life. Evenings were punctuated by storytelling and laughter, proof that life's greatest riches come from connections, not possessions. Musa's heart, once driven by pride and ego, blossomed into fatherly love, a tenderness that made his earlier life feel like a faded memory. Esther, too, flourished, embracing motherhood with a confidence hard-earned by years of challenge and triumph. Together they looked forward to the future, knowing that whatever happened, their love and the lessons they had learned would serve as a shield and a beacon for the next generation. As the years went by, both Musa and Esther faced new trials. Life had a way of testing their resolve, sometimes in unexpected ways. The bakery, once thriving, met fierce competition when a large chain opened nearby. Profits dwindled, and the stress weighed heavy on Esther's shoulders. She worried that her dream would crumble. Musa, too, felt the pressure, haunted by his responsibility to keep their family stable. Instead of letting adversity drive them apart, they leaned on the lessons their love story had taught them. Together, they discussed every problem, sometimes late into the night when children slept and the city outside quieted. Musa offered ideas, but more importantly, he listened. Esther shared her anxieties, but also her hope. Hand in hand, they planned new recipes, events at the bakery, and ways to connect with their community again. They decided to host charity days, giving free bread to those who needed it most. Esther started a weekly baking class for local children, many from families who couldn't afford treats. Slowly, goodwill became their silent brand, and the neighborhood responded. Customers, touched by their generosity, returned in greater numbers. News spread, soon reaching the city's heart, drawing media attention and support from unlikely quarters. Through these trials, Musa and Esther found their marriage growing stronger. They realized it wasn't wealth or success that defined them. It was resilience and the ability to share burdens without shame. They faced every challenge as partners, knowing that together they could withstand any storm. The bakery survived, not by outselling competitors, but by reminding everyone that hope and kindness could outshine even the brightest neon sign. Not all wounds healed quickly, especially when it came to Musa's extended family. An uncle, once disapproving, finally visited the bakery. He looked at Esther, not with judgment, but with curiosity. Over coffee and pastries, Musa took a bold step and shared the truth of how his romance began. The infamous bet, the skepticism, the challenge, and his transformation. The uncle listened, eyes wide. Instead of anger, he expressed admiration for their honesty and humility. He confessed that he doubted their marriage, but seeing the love between them and their impact on the community convinced him otherwise. He apologized for the coldness and even asked Esther for forgiveness. This gesture rippled through the family, inspiring relatives who had remained distant to reach out. Holiday gatherings grew larger, richer in laughter and shared stories. The children reveled in new relationships, basking in the warmth of their extended family. Esther's own relatives found themselves welcomed with open arms. Musa made sure no one felt excluded, regardless of status or history. He actively reached out to those who had turned away, understanding now that pride and prejudice can rob us of life's greatest joys. Over time, their home symbolized not only romantic love, but the healing of generational wounds. Family, once a source of tension, became a wellspring of support. With their own story as a guide, Musa and Esther became pillars of hope for others at crossroads. They launched a foundation to help young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds, especially women and minorities who, like Esther once did, felt unseen in society. Musa led workshops on responsible business practices, speaking frankly about the risks of arrogance and short-term vision. Esther hosted seminars on baking and hospitality, emphasizing the importance of kindness over competition. Their foundations supplied microloans, mentorship, and scholarships. Local businesses flourished, inspired by the couple's model. Esther became a sought-after leader, her journey validating dreams for countless girls who once doubted their potential. Musa's transformation became a case study in humility for young men struggling to redefine masculinity and success. At community events, the couple answered questions honestly, often sharing chuckles over moments of failure or lessons learned the hard way. Marcus and Stanley sometimes joined them, recounting stories of how friendship too can change for the better. Their foundation's annual celebration became a highlight, with stories of transformation and gratitude echoing through the crowd. Their legacy was no longer just about rising above adversity. It was about lifting others alongside them, weaving hope into the fabric of everyday life. In quieter seasons, Musa and Esther found time for reflection, Evenings were spent on their small balcony, gazing at the city lights, talking about days gone by. Musa sometimes asked Esther if she ever regretted accepting his pursuit, given how it began as a bet. Esther would laugh, reaching for his hand and remind him that life's greatest blessings often come in unlikely forms. Their hearts flooded with gratitude. They spoke of friends, family, their children, the bakery, and all the lives their journey had touched. Sometimes Musa felt a tug of sorrow for the women he'd manipulated in the past, and he used these memories to guide his children toward kindness and respect, all the things he'd learned to value. Esther found peace not in possessions, but in their shared laughter and quiet conversations, knowing her worth had been affirmed in every action, every forgiving word. They acknowledged their flaws, promising each other to keep learning and growing, no matter how old they got. Lessons bloom. When doubts crept in or the shadows of old fears loomed, they turned these moments into opportunities for connection. Gratitude became their daily practice, for love, for healing, for the community they built and served together. As their children grew up and set off on their own paths, Musa and Esther's story became a beacon for generations. They published a book together, recounting in honest, sometimes painful detail how two hearts fused through adversity, bridging differences of class, appearance, and wounded pride. Lessons bloom. The book, translated into several languages, found readers in faraway places, inspiring people who had never heard of Lados, but could feel the universality of their struggle and triumph. Musa and Esther traveled to speak at conferences focused on compassion, marriage, and overcoming prejudice. They shared hugs with the audience, always emphasizing that the real miracle wasn't the wedding, the bakery, or the forgiven bet. It was the decision to meet each other's gaze beyond the surface, to believe in second chances, and to embrace the unknown. Their deaths, when they finally came long after, were marked by outpourings of gratitude and remembrance from all corners of the city. Streets near the bakery were named for them. An annual day of service commemorated their legacy. Children, now grown, continued their parents' work, passing on the torch of hope, resilience, and love. Thus, the story of Musa and Esther became more than a tale of a bet. It became a living monument to the idea that love can conquer deceit, tradition, and every wall society builds. In the end, their legacy was not built on wealth or status, but on the gentle, persistent courage of two souls who transformed a fleeting challenge into a lifelong gift to themselves, their community, and the world.